First things first. Oh yeah. Secondly, I've got a mic. So for all you people out there, audio quality, I've got them. I've had this mic for a while, but it's working now. So now you can go to sleep listening to the ASMR tones of my voice. You're welcome. Thirdly, I'm doing a painting video. Because it's my first painting video, we're going to go for scenery. If you watched the channel before, you know that I have quite a large selection already of orc terrain. And then I found this badass looking thing on eBay. It's a gigantic corner ruin. So he's asked me to do videos for painting, so I can just get the order of things down and see how it goes for me, recording wise and editing wise. I thought I'd start with scenery because I can paint scenery with my eyes closed. I've got a pretty good simple method for doing it. Andy's just off cam. Say hello, Andy.
Hello, Andy.
He's building Space Wolves. So while he's building Space Wolves, I'm going to go through how I paint orc terrain and just a few tips for painting terrain in general. So yeah, you all better watch this because you've all been asking for painting videos. If this one goes well, let me know what else. So let's get into how I paint my orc terrain. Here we are out in the backyard. I've got my spray table, which is actually a coil for holding on cables. You see, I've been using it on my Death Guard there, and I've been using it on Lord Vordry and his big purple dragon for Age of Sigmar. Now, the spray paints that we're going to need for prepping it is, we've got lead belcher, black, and then from Army Painter I've got rat fur. So the first thing I'm going to do is Chaos Black spray. Then I'm going to spray the bottom and the corners with rat fur to get the brown in there for weathering. Then last I'll do a zenithal spray, so that would be spraying from the top down over, because it'll all be black. Spraying it from the top down will give some shadowing to the parts of the model. So let's crack on with spray painting it now. If it's a new can of spray paint, I'll always clear the nozzle first in case any of it's hardened up. Then I'll spray from underneath for the black. Let it dry. Once it's dry, flip it over. Again, spray it from underneath because you want to get the black in the shadows for when you zenithal spray it later with the silver. Right, that's it all sprayed black. Underneath everything, the whole thing's now sprayed black. Now, with the fur brown, as you can see, it's basically Games Workshop Mournfang brown. This is Fur Brown by Army Painter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically spray the bottom, say 20% of the model, and then I'm going to spray the insides of the floors. Observe. This will give the effect of weathering and give it a bit of colour and depth to the model. So let's go over and have a look how it looks so far. So you see now, got the brown spray right into the corners of all the buildings, and you go around and now the bottom of it is all stained brown with mud, dirt, rust, whatever you like. Next up will be silver spray. And yes, I know I need to do my weeds. This is a Warhammer channel, not a gardening channel. Leave my garden alone. Okay, next up is zenithal spraying. Zenithal spraying just means that you're spraying it from... Generally, it just means that you're spraying it from above. Again, just clear anything that might be in the nozzle that's hardened up. You don't want to pebble dash it with loaded dry paint. It looks terrible. Ask my weird boy in my orc army. So, spray it down over. That should give plenty of shadowing off because you sprayed everything black earlier. Right, let's have a look at it now. It's drying at the moment, but as you can see, we've now got a big silver building with dirty brown bits in the corners and plenty of shadowing on all of the metal parts from the zenithal spray. So now I'm going to take it inside and start picking out the details of it before we apply washes and things. Okay, so I've set up a little painting area. This is normally the table I do my gaming on, because if you watch the other video of me and Joe talking, you'll know that my actual painting area is absolute madness. So I've cleared a little space here to paint the scenery and show you without having a million other paints in the background. So I'll go over the paints that we're going to need for the next stage. So I've got myself 7 paints out here. Now, Mornfang is going to be used for weathering, so I'll go over the rest of them. So we're going to have Nuln Oil and Agrax will be for shading. So these 4 colours we're going to be used because I like to paint the scenery to match the Goth clan. So that would be red, black and white, but because of the scenery being aged, I don't use a white, I use a cream, which is going to be Rakarth Flesh. The red part, Corn Red, Black Templar I use to darken down panels, and then Balthazar Gold will be to paint in any brass piping and things like that. So when it comes to the modelling, planning out what's going to be what before I start. So up on the parapet at the top, we've got these teeth. So they're going to be done in red. I was thinking these big, basically the girders, struts if you like, of the building, I want to do them in red, as well as we've got the teeth along the side. This scenery set does have some organic things on it. It's got some mushrooms growing on it, but because I need to focus on the metallic parts first, I'll do them after, because I've got to do metallic chipping at the end. So you can't do metallic chips on mushrooms unless they're crazy, weird metallic ones. Then we've got all the pipe work going up this side of the building. That will be done in Balthazar Gold. And then you've got some panels bolted on. I can do them in Black Templar, or I can do them in the cream with the checks on. So that's basically planning out your plan of attack. Just spin it around. Again, we've got more mushrooms, which I'll do last. We've got the teeth sticking out the top. We've got more pipe work and just panels bolted onto the side, which I'll go and paint in red and black and cream. So let's crack on with that now. Okay, so I can't show you painting the whole bottle. What I'll just show you is the gist of what you want to be doing. So when it comes to scenery, there's a few things you can do that can speed up the process. So example being, I think I got this off Peachy actually. So we'll pick, oh God, this thing's so big. Hold on. There we go. Right. So we'll pick the top of this panel here. Now, when it comes to painting scenery, because orcs painted it and it's weathered, you don't necessarily have to paint the full panel. So I can paint the red on, and then I can go up to the edges like this. And once I work my way down the model, I should really have a bigger brush for this, but this is the biggest I could find at the time. You can paint up to the edge of it. Some parts you can leave. Okay, so I've done the corn red, and as you can see, what I've done on the panels is paint it from the bottom, and then as you work, thin it out, and it just looks like the paint is chipped off the edge. It doesn't look like much at the moment. When it gets to the bottom of each panel, it's very, very feathered out and weak, because the weather will just been working it off. And then up at the top, same again on the teeth there, just to try and give a little bit of, I don't know, just something visual to the model, to pick out its key features. So that's the red panels. Now I'll do the same thing again with the black panels. Black panels are a contrast paint, but the method is essentially the same. Just plonk it into the centre. Then if you want, you can do the bottom, but where the top of it would get chipped off more, just go up to the edge and just leave the edge silver. Then when you go over it later, when we're chipping it, do more chipping around the edge, and it'll just look like the paintwork has been chipped off by battling, the weather, whichever you like. And then it just darkens down that panel. Probably hasn't even filmed that, because I'm too busy looking by eye. So pick this up, then we're just picking out other parts. So we go for this one here, just paint the bolt in, just go all the way along the centre of the panel. Just leave all the edge of it silver, chipped away. There's another panel done in black. Once that's dry, you've got a black panel. Just just what a goth asks for. Okay, you can see now I've gone over a bunch of the panels that are bolted on to the ruin, and I've put black contrast into the centre of them, again leaving the edges silver. I went around on the inside, I've picked out just a few panels, had a bit of colour to it, and then I've also finished off doing all the red, again into the centre of the panel, and then finned as it goes towards the bottom. And then you can see I've actually started to do some of the Balthazar gold, where I've left this part on the side. I'll paint these pipes in to show you what I'm doing. So the basic gist is picking them out for a little bit, like I say, just visuals to point out things, but I do it thinner on the bottom of like a dry brush as you work your way down towards the base, because I'm going to be doing more weathering around the bottom, so it'll make more sense why things are feathered out, because of the amount of washes and weathering that's going to be around the bottom of the model. So now let's get these pipes painted in. Yeah. Now I've went and found a slightly bigger brush for this part. What I'm going to do is, for the majority of it, it's just going to be two solid coats, two thin coats to coat our main man Duncan. But as I get further down, see, I'll probably use a neater brush to go around where the panels are, but as we get down, I want to thin the paint out as I go down the pipe. And then as we get down the pipe, I'm going to just sort of dry brush the base of it, and then I'm going to build the colour back up to solid as we go further up. And then once I do the washes later on, and then all the weathering with the dust, things like that, it'll show why the colour has been washed away at the bottom. Plus, it's quicker, it's scenery. So I'm going to put two solid coats up at the top to about 75% of the way down, then I'm just going to thin it out on the bottom. So that's the pipe work now painted in. I've done it on the inside as well. You've got to get the insides done as well. You want your terrain to look realistic. And as you can see, it's much more solid at the top. It's had two solid coats put on the top. There's another thing about 3D printed terrain as well. If you're getting real close, you can see like the lines of the print. Sometimes your paint like soaks into those lines, so it makes the paint look thinner when you do it. So you've got to make sure you do two solid, especially on 3D printed stuff. Then, as you can see, I've just thinned it out as it goes towards the bottom. That's basically now everything on this terrain piece is now basically got its colour, except for the mushrooms and the other mushrooms, because they're a natural. They need to be done after the fact. And then if you look inside the building, it's actually got some interior lights. It's got some interior lights. They need to be done dead last as well, because the light effect needs to go onto everything, all the weather and all the chipping. Light effect needs to go onto that, so that'll make it pop at the end. So now that all the colours are blocked in, now it's time to start doing some washes. So we need two washes for this. Got Null oil, that'll be going on the red. Yeah, Null oil goes on the red. Pretty much everything else will be getting Agrax Earthshade. I will not be going over the full model with it. I will be going over the bottom and working my way up. So as I've been filling the paints out as I go down, when I do the washes, it's the opposite. So solid, say like the bottom 20%, 15, 20% of the bottom will be all Agrax Earthshade, and then I'll work my way up and go around the parts. So I'll be going around the brass parts and around the windows and other parts. Then the non-oil will be going completely over everything that's red. So let's do that now. What I suggest you buy is one of those paint pot holders as well if you're going to be using washes, because these things love tipping over. And you also have to, if you knock over your paint pots, if you knock over your washes, it seems to be the unwritten rule that you have to post it on social media, as well as if you cut yourself while doing hobby as well. That has to be posted online no matter what. Well, first things first, non-oil over everything that's red, then we'll do the Agrax Earthshade, because the Agrax Earthshade will be going over the red bits as well at the bottom. And make sure you give it a good shake. Always check the bottom to make sure there isn't a large white build up at the bottom. If there is, give it a good shake up first. Oh God, I'm terrified I'm going to knock it over. So yeah, when it comes to the red parts, we're going to do the full frontage of it, full coverage all the way across, but we're also going to add a bit of shadowing just down the sides of it as well. Okay, the null oil's now done on the model. If you're noticing a difference in the light, I'm just painting this model when I get home from work most nights. As you can see, all the red has been dulled right down now by the null oil. One thing I will say is this is sort of my first long form video for painting, so if there's anything that is any critiques, any advice, anything you'd like to see, just let me know, and as the channel goes on we can hopefully come up with some improve the videos. I'm just new to this, but I'll go over a few things. So null oil, I went over all the black panels with it, I went over all the red panels, but what I like to do is, like I was saying, I like to frame it as well, so I'll go around. So as an example, one thing that you can do with scenery as well, so if you put a wash over something, yeah, to stain it and dull it down, and then if it overspills, if you're painting a model, you'd be like, oh my god, no, I need to save and soak up the wash with your brush and wash it, soak it up, wash it. It's not quite like that when you're doing scenery. It's not that big a deal. So when I was doing the teeth along the top, put the black null oil along there, then it starts to pull because of gravity. And then what I did, as you can see, is I then basically just dragged it and stabbed it all the way along to add a bit of depth and shading along the top, along the barricade along the top. And again, it's gone all the way around, then down the sides of all the big girders on the side, then on the inside of it I've gone over all the black panels and a little bit in the bottom of each floor as well. Now that that's done, I'm going to do the same again with, I've put extra what's this stuff called, kitchen roll down, because I'm now going to do all the brass parts with Agrax Earthshade. So the wash Agrax Earthshade, which is brown, that's going to go over all the brass parts. But because I want it to act as dirt as well, and a little bit of, like, you use it to build up areas that might be rusty as well, I'm going to go along the bottom of the model. So when I was thinning out the brass going down, I'm going to build the Agrax up, which is why I've got the extra kitchen towels down to catch any that's going to spill off and go onto the table. This table is just a fold out table that I painted with chalkboard paint, by the way. So if you ever want to just neaten it back up, just more chalkboard paint. It's what I game on top of. So yeah, that's going to be the next step. Anything that's brass, go over it with Agrax Earthshade around it and give it a nice framing as well. Go over it along all the way along all the bottom, and then there's going to be a few other things that I'm going to do, which I'll show you as I'm painting it. Okay, paint pot's back. Change the water in that because it had metallic flakes in the last one. To be honest with you, when I'm painting scenery, I don't actually care, but I know there might be some people watching, see me use paint that's got paint flecks in it, and they'll be like clutching the chest in pain at what they were witnessing. So for those people's safety, I've went and changed it and got fresh water in there. Now the Agrax Earthshade, again, buy yourself one of those things to hold your paint, hold the pot, otherwise you're going to knock it over. Now, everything's just going to be getting a solid coat over it. So follow the pipeline down. I always go heavy with the washes as well. I don't tend to like keep over brushing it and thinning it out. And then when it gets to the sides, I'm going to put quite a lot in, so that way I get a shadow, a pool around it. That's so should I say. Right. So that's all the way up there. So I'll just focus on this side for now. Strange painting on camera, by the way. It's weird. Now, so I'll go around there. Now, what I was saying earlier about dragging out the black along the top, I'm going to do this with the Agrax now. So I'm going to drag it out along the bottom of here. Then I'm going to take it up. I'm going to create a little bit of a frame in this area here. So then I'm just going to drag that bit out. Just so that panel there now isn't quite so flat. It has a bit of depth where the dirt would build up along the bottom. I can't even see what I'm doing here. I'm literally just leaning around the pipe. Mad skills. And then again, all the way along, and then I'll drag it along the bottom of there, along the top of that sort of supporting girder, up the side of this pipe, up the side of there, thin it out a little bit, and then just stab in and just drag the paint out. Now this takes longer, but in my opinion, once you add in like the rust effects later and build it all up, it's much better. Looks much better. This is the part that takes the longest really when I'm painting scenery. I don't tend to completely cover the scenery in one wash. I tend to do a recess shade and then drag it out. I do that on most things. So now I'm going to continue going solid completely over all of the brass, and then I'm going to drag out and feather it out away across the panels to stain them, and then later on all these parts that have been stained brown, they'll then get built up more with the orangey browny colours to look like dirt or rust. Okay, I've finished putting all of the Agrax Earthshade over the model, so maybe if I can get a bit closer, you can see on the panels I've tried to make them get a little bit dirtier down into the recess of the panel, and the bottom of it has just been completely covered. Now if you wanted to, you could just, that's battle ready, it's got all the colours on it, and you put a wash on it. Yeah. On the inside, I've done on the inside as well, darkened it down. Obviously the mushrooms and stuff aren't done, but most terrain pieces don't have mushrooms on them, but it's just all metallics. So you could happily just leave that there and go, there you go, I've got some colour on it, got some washes on it, let's have a game. Battle ready. That's battle ready in it. Colours are on, washes are on. But we're going to do some more with it. Of course we are. What we're going to do, I'm going to build the red back up. So I've got corn red, which is the colour I put on the first time, and then I'm going to do a few highlights on where the paint reaches the edges of the panels, or where I feel like a bit of chipping would go and accentuate the chipping. And again, just like I keep saying with the terrain, stuff near the top will be lighter, and then by the bottom I'm just not going to do it. It's just going to be faded out. The red's just going to be faded as it goes down, and then once I do the chipping later with the sponge, that will also add to the effect of the paint being chipped off and give more definition to the model. So let's crack on with applying the reds now. Okay, next painting video we're doing something smaller, but thin the paint, it's only terrain, and we're just going to basically fill out the area again, but we're going to make it nice and splotchy to look like layers of paint. That's all been getting thinned and chipped away. But when you get to the bottom, there's a big shadow there from a shading, but I'm going to block in the bottom of the panel so I can then highlight all the way around that. Then it makes it appear as if the edges along the top, where it would be getting scuffed more, especially on these top teeth, will be getting scuffed more. So the paint's nice and thin, so I'm going to continue that. Not sure if you can see that properly with this camera and the light. Hopefully you can. We can all go over this in a little review at the end and in the comments. But I do a very just stabby style on terrain, then lots of dry brushing later. Again, block the bottom of the panel in, go around the edge. So that's that, and then tell you what, while we're on these two I'll do these two top teeth, which I've lightened back up. I'll get the Evil Sun Scarlet, I'll do some highlights on there, then I'll show you. I'll just cut to it all being done. So I've got my Evil Sun Scarlet there. Because of the size of this stupid piece of terrain, I'm having to put it off to the side just so you can see what I'm doing. So the two top teeth that I've done so far, because of the style I'm going for with the chipped terrain, I do also do my highlights in a stabby style as well, to create the effect the paint's getting chipped off. And then we've got where the paint is now, I'll just sort of stab around those areas create an effect that the paint's getting worn away and worked away. Then later on when I chip around the edge with black and silver, it'll build it up even more. The effect of the paint is being worn away. Move on to the next one. Just whack the light there with my big snoz. And then like Blue Peter, what I did before this is, or like Art Attack, if you used to watch Art Attack, I've actually done round the corner of the building so I can show you basically the effect that I'm going for. What I also like to do as well is where the water would grab it and then drag down some of the colours to create the effect of rain dragging down the colour. So you had a bit more water in. And just grab hold of anywhere like there'd be a big chip of paint, and then just get the red paint and then just drag it down. Bit of gravity for you. And the Dukes of Hazzard have just drove past my house, I think. And then, like I said, Blue Peter style, I actually did all around this side. So if you have a look, move that paint pot. If you have a look, I've done all the side girders and just added some highlights around some of the holes on the side of the girders where the red paint went up to it. Then did some along the edges where the paint, but generally it's just a little bit of red added along, and then I did the same on the top teeth as well. So now I'm going to continue go and do that over all the red parts. Like I say, because I'm just stabbing it on, chipping it on, it doesn't take too long. Okay, I've gone over all the red, like I say, it's thinned out towards the bottom, and a little bit more red towards the top to make it look like the paint's been chipped away. Lovely jubbly. Now, there's one last thing we need to do colours wise. This is a goth building and we've got some black panels kicking about, so I'm going to do a little bit of freehand in here. So I'm going to do checks and a few orky symbols on them. I'll do them now. I'm going to use Rakarth Flesh and Skeleton Horde. So I'll do Rakarth Flesh, then a thin down Skeleton Horde just to knock the colour back a bit, stain it, then Rakarth Flesh again as a highlight to build the colour back up. And I'll show you when I'm painting that, I sort of paint it in a very scratchy up and down style as if there was, you know, a runt herder stood up on top and he was just dangling a grot down, you know, but no harness, just probably a rope around his waist or his neck or something, and he's got to paint the checks on the building. So they're gonna, I don't do my checks super neat, I do them as if a grot was painting them under pain of, you know, a squig hound who's going to eat him if he doesn't do it. So pick out a few of the flat panels on it and do some checks, and I'll do some goth glyphs. Right, so I've got my Rakarth Flesh thinned down with a bit of water in there. Now what you won't know, because it's like my first painting video, we'll see how much of a disaster it goes, but we're going through a little bit of my Richard's greatest hits here when it comes to paints. I've already used Corn Red and Evil Sun Scarlet. They're my go-to colours for reds. I do have an extra highlight colour but I won't for reds, but I'm not using it on terrain. And then I use Rakarth Flesh for all sorts. It's a fantastic colour and I really like it for doing off-white checks and glyphs for my orks, as well as Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade, Skeleton Horde. You know, these are just colours that I use all the time on everything. So I just, if I was going to say, oh, paints to pick up Rakarth Flesh, pick up Skeleton Horde, Evil Sun Scarlet, Corn Red, they're all fantastic. Then Mornfang Brown becoming another one of my favourites. Balthazar Gold I use for all sorts as well. Now, when it comes to doing, I'll pick a panel and I'll just do some checks on it. How are we doing? So with this one here, what I'll try and do is I'll paint a square in here, just nice and rough. Then I'll do it on the other corner, and then try and work out from that point, once I've done that, how another check would look. So I'll tell you what I'll do, is I'll just put one bang centre, nice, just block it in rough, then I'll do the other corner. Yeah, so it's starting to look like something, and I'm painting up and down as if that's like the grots with his brush painting away scared because there's a squig hound barking at him or whatever the noise a squig makes. I build a feather the pit, cut the feather out the checks, just keep getting them a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're starting to reach towards each other. I don't care if they're not exact squares or the exact right size. And in my mind, an orc did it. And then, like I say, like I did with the red, I'll happily just drag down a bit of paint as if, you know, they put too much paint on, and the paint itself is actually ran while they're doing it. So I'm going to go around now. I'm going to pick out a few more panels, put some more checks on, paint maybe some scar symbols or the goth bull head on some of the panels, and then we'll put the skeleton horde over it. So there we go. I've blocked in some check patterns, some glyphs. I used Black Templar just if I want to put any scuffs on to them, or just to put the eyes in on the symbols, because it's easier to just block the shape of the glyph in and then just put the eyes on later. So next up, it will be skeleton horde. I'll thin it down and I'll sort of almost glaze it over all these panels that have got the Rakar flesh on them. So here I've got myself 2 dollops of skeleton horde, and I'll thin it down with two dollops of water. That should be thin enough, I think. Let's close that before I launch it. And then all I'm going to do is just very lightly sort of glaze it over each panel and stain each panel with skeleton horde. The full thing. Doesn't matter if it's going over the black. Doesn't matter if it's dirty, does it? It's orc building. They ain't looking after it, are they? Okay, so that's the skeleton horde dried on there, so it's all nicely stained. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of Wheezy Tiger, a little bit of Rakar flesh, and I'm just going to paint it over the bolt, just back into the centre of the panel. There's a bolt there. Bolt there, there you go. Nothing crazy, just to lighten it back up. I'm going to do that on all of the glyphs and checks, and then we're on to a bit of weathering for the pipes. Right, next 2 colours for 2 completely different methods of painting. We're going to do a almost wash glaze of Cabalite green. That's going to be for the brass parts, to add a bit of oxidisation to them and add a bit of colour to it. So that's just going to be thinned down, very, very thin down, and then we're going to wash it over. Now, depending on what it is, I can go a lot light or heavy. If this was, say, like a bronze statue that you were doing, I'd go very, very heavy with it. But on this terrain, I'm not going to go too heavy with it. And then we've got Iron Hand Steel, which I am going to dry brush. Again, from, say, 25% up, 30% up, and dry brush very, very, very lightly over the model. Just catch the edges of all these panels, catch the edges and lighten up the edge of the pipe once the Cabalite has dried. So we'll do the Cabalite first, wait for that to dry. It shouldn't take too long because it's absolutely boiling today. So this first, then we're going to do some dry brushing. Get yourself a big brush, a bigger brush for doing this. You don't need much Cabalite, you need plenty of water though. Easy Tiger. If that was a wash, that would have spilt everywhere. That should be fine. That should be fine. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it. Can you see that? Can you see what I'm doing? This is awkward as. So I'm just going to run that in and around. I don't have to necessarily go over the whole thing, but I'm just going to add a bit of colour. Make sure you get right into the where it would pool the most along the edges. And then just because of the way rainwater and that would work, it's always going to pool down over. So just keep pulling it down the sides. It's going to go underneath. It's going to come down the side there. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to add this green to all of the brass parts of the model. Okay, the green has dried. It's added a little bit of colour to it. So you've got the oxidisation building up on the bottom of each panel around those windows. It's just not looking so flat now, which is good. Next up, we're going to be dry brushing it. So and get rid of my water, move those brushes out the way, put that there. I don't need my palette for the time being. Just get my kitchen roll I've been using. I usually fold it up a couple of times and then I'll be using that. I'll be happy with this brush that I've got here. You see that? It's nice and frayed out because it's been used plenty, but it's pretty soft. Just so I can start dry brushing the iron hand steel. And like I said, like I keep emphasising, work from the top down to about, I'm going to say a different percentage every single time, but you get what I'm trying to say. The bottom's dirty, so we're doing the top. I've just bought this. Hear that fresh pop? Lovely. So work it in, rotate the brush round. Now I'm not going to go mad with this dry brushing either. I'm just going to be very, very lightly going along the edges. It'll just catch all the bolts and give a lot more definition to everything. And then later on I'll accentuate that more with the chipping with the black and silver with the sponge. But for now, I'm just going to go over the whole model, including the brass parts, including the metal plates that I've painted, all of them. I'm going to go over everything with this. But like I say, I'm going to get to about here and I'm going to stop. Okay, so that's it all, excuse me, that's it all now dry brushed. Just with a light silver dry brush. One of the things you need to remember as well when you're doing scenery is you don't want any of the colours or anything to be popping too much, because I always remember Duncan Rhodes talking about it, saying you want the scenery to be a backdrop to your models. You don't want it taking the eye away too much from them. So when you do your highlights and everything on your models, make them more prominent so they stand out when they've got this behind them. So, and the insides just had a light dry brush as well. Now is the messiest part of all of this. The next part is Mornfang Brown, which is a trick from Warhammer TV, which I think they got from one of the army painters. They went and spoke to one of the army painters. I think I remember saying in a video about painting terrain quickly, and they give them this little trick with Mornfang Brown, and doing a little bit of a similar thing to what I did with the green going up on the pipes. I'm going to do the same thing with Mornfang Brown, but over pretty much, apart from the pipes, over the entire model. I'll do it on the bottom, but over the entire model. But what you've got to do with this, I'm going to be thinning it down, big brush, and applying this. So it acts as two things. One, it acts as dirt, over it acts as rust, because it's a light brown. I've already got all the dark brown along the bottom, which it'll just mix straight into. But what you need to do with this is you need to have a fresh kitchen towel with you. So as you apply it, thin, very watery, it gets into all the recesses, soaks into all the recesses, but then you have to wipe it off straight away as well. So it just settles more into the creases. Creases, yeah, creases, recesses, whichever you like. So you need to put more kitchen roll down, and you need a big load of kitchen roll to soak it up as you do it. So let's begin. Let's get messy. Right, let's top that up. Beautiful. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get some Mournfang brown. I'm going to make it really, really watery. Like really watery. Like a lot. But then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to get a dollop here. I'm not going to make it as watery. This one is for any bolts, any recesses, any little grooves where I want to build it up a bit more. This, the really watery, I'll get a bit more actually because I'm going to go through this really quick. This is for whole panels. So let's go. I've got my kitchen roll there. So I'm just going to apply this all over a panel. See what I'm talking about. Just slap it on. Get it in there. Get it in there nice and deep like, yeah. That's it. Get it in there. Make sure you stab it in. Use a big brush. I can soak up loads of water. Right, so we'll go for that section there. So, there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this and I'm going to wipe it off. So now you can see that it's left it in all the grooves, and I've cleaned up the panel itself, the majority. So it'll be the same again. Get it along here, slap it along there, bring it along. Oh, beautiful, look at that. Get it in those grooves on that, get it in there. Stop there. And come here. Get this. What was that? So you can see now that's going to pool and build up and stain all along there. And so as an example of what you would do with the thicker one. So while I'm at it, I could just go, you know what, I'm going to do a couple of bolts on here. Maybe it's a little bit more in that corner, a little bit more in that corner. Maybe it's a little bit more on this roof bit here. Maybe just pick out a couple of bolts. I don't want them to be darker. Maybe I want the inside of these girders to be a bit darker, a bit more rusty. And I'll pick another bolt out there. Get it in that bit there. Just those parts will be, the colour will be a bit stronger. So there you go. I'm going to continue doing that across the whole model. Okay, so it's looking a little bit like my toilet when I get home from work every day, but I've now washed over the whole model and then wiped most of it off. But when I turn it around, you can see the difference it makes in the corners of the buildings. This is all drying now, so I'm going to go off to bed, let this dry. I tend to, when it's all going to drip, and I'll tend to just give it a whack, try and get any of the bits that are building up on the bottom to drop off onto the kitchen roll. So yeah, I'm just going to let this dry. Easy tiger. Once that's dry, go around and I'll build up the rust with some scrag brown, but I'll do that in the morning. So let's let this dry. Okay, so it's morning now. I've got my coffee sorted, and the Mournfang brown has now dried on the model. So we've got beautiful, look at that. So that's all, it's all dried in all the corners. It's giving lots of dirt and depth to each floor. Now what I'm going to do is I've got scrag brown, which is a more orangey brown, and just using a smaller brush. Put that over there. I'm going to water it down, not super heavy though this time. I'm going to water down Scrag Brown. And when I was picking out some of the points on the model to say I was going to build up the rust a little bit more, I'm just going to accentuate those parts a little bit. Get out of here, you. God, this is awkward, this stupid terrain piece. So, as an example, we could go for one of these bolts up on the top, and we'll just run the Scrag Brown in around that bolt just to increase the look of the rusty effect. And then one thing you can do is to show the rust running down the model. We could pick an area. We could put some rust around this here. Then just build it up in that area. Then just run it down there, down the side, just to build up the look of rain building up on the bolts and the rivets and everything else, dripping down and going down in the panels, just like that. Just you don't have to do the whole everything. Just go around, just pick out a few points on the model, a few areas that you want to build up, and just add a bit. It's just adding a bit more colour to the scenery, really. We've got the greens now, the reds, everything else going on. So I'm just going to go around, pick out a few more areas like that, do a few dripping down the model, and then we're on to chipping all the paint off with black and silver. Right, now the Scrag Brown has dried. I've built that up in a lot of the areas, especially along the edges, and where it would pool. It was spinning, whoa. So yeah, built it up in plenty of places, just sort of build up the rust effect on the model. Now, this is where the fun begins. So, what we're doing next is we're going to do some chipping. We're going to chip the paint off, make it look more battle damaged. So for that, we need black. I'm going to use Abaddon black. Then, well, I'll tell you what, and after that, what we're going to apply it with is some sponge. So I've got some sponge that I've ripped out of an old carry case. You can use, scouring sponge that you do if you're one of the people who does your dishes, unlike me. So you can use these, just tear them off, use the jaggedy edge to stipple on, and then same again, sort of try to make yourself a couple of pieces of sponge. And then after that, it'll be Runefang steel to do the metal chipping. So start off with black, and then one other thing I'm going to do, which I'll probably show while I'm doing it, is we've got these pipes and these chimneys at the top. So as I'm going around and I'm chipping around all of the bits of metal, when I get to these chimneys, I'm going to apply the black up more along the top, and it'll look like soot is building up, coming out the top of the chimneys as well, because, I can't imagine orcs are big into environmental health and stuff like that. So I've just flipped over my palette just for ease of not mixing in the colours. So we want some black, stick that on there, give that a wash, just leave it in there. Right, so sponge, you don't want it to be too jagged, you want it to be sort of flush. So I'll tell you what, rip that there. I'm happy with that, how that bit looks. Then you want to dab it all over. It's like when you used to make things out of potatoes and make like little stamps out of potatoes. Anyway, so let's have a look. So you just pick an area I'm going to go for, and I'll just stab it along there. So can you see that? So you've now got black along the edge of there, and then like I said, I'm actually going to do it heavier along the top of these chimneys. So I want it to look like soot is building up along the top of each one of the chimneys. So when I come to doing the metal chipping, I won't actually do the metal chipping on these tops of these chimneys, because that would just be covered over by all the soot anyway. So that's one of the chimneys done, and then tell you what, it might be easy if I flip it upside down actually here, and then just start to dab on the black around the top of the chimney. thin it out a bit. And then what I'll do is where this would be staining the building above it, because they haven't put the pipe high enough. Terrible. And again, this bit, this tooth, jagged bit would be getting, same as this, would be getting loads and loads of soot build up on it. And then again, just go around the edges of the buildings, just stab along, and then just like I keep saying all the time, I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom. Let's flip it back over. I'm only going to work my way. I'm only going to work my way down to about here, because after I've done this chipping, I'm going to do the dust and muck along the bottom of the building. So I'm going to go around and just add chipping, lightly dabbing on the black. Right then, so we've got the black chipping done, and obviously I did it a little bit heavier here for the soot, but then I've chipped all along the edges, along all the teeth, along the top, down the sides, and then along the edges of all the floors, because it could be chipping, it could be damage. I don't know, maybe some big laser weapon chopped this building off. You don't know what happened, you weren't there. So next up, we're going to have Rune Fang steel. It's probably the lightest silver colour that they do. Another piece of sponge, observe, and we're going to do chipping. Like I say, I'm going to leave the soot part alone and just chip the other parts of it. So I've got my sponge, got my silver, get a bit of it off there, and then, like I say, we pick an edge and then just stab at it along there, a little bit lighter than how you did the black, and you should get a nice little chipping effect along there. And if you want to, just bring it down the side of these panels as well, the girders and things like that. And then I did a little bit of chipping along the brass piping as well. You can always do it along there. I'm not going all the way down. How many times am I going to say that in this video? You don't have to go mad with this. And we get a bit more on there, work out a bit into there, and then we'll just pick out the edge of the building. We'll get a lot of chipping on the edge. Then I'm going to work my way around, and I'll do the edges of the floor and chip along all of them as well. So I'm going to do that, go around the whole model and just stab and chip away at all the edges. Okay, that's the chipping done. So one of the things I do is, when it comes to the chipping and the weathering with the Mournfang Brown, I do that on pretty much everything that I paint. So if it's like my Mechanicum terrain or whatever else it is, it means that you can mix your terrain sets together. So if you do the same black and silver chip and you do the same Mournfang Brown weathering, it means your terrain sets have a link between them all, so they can match in. And then if you want to do, an individual colour scheme for it, I've got the green military buildings and I've got this orc terrain with the reds and the blacks on it. And then speaking of that, I use the same two colours for weathering the bottoms of the buildings. So these are two like staples in my paint. We've got Steel Legion Drab, and then we've got Screaming Skull. Screaming Skull is the one. Screaming Skull ties everything together. No matter you paint anything terrain wise, then just dry brush it with Screaming Skull when you're done. Bish bash biddly bosh, you're done. Everything's tied together. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get Steel Legion Drab, and like I've been saying, the bottom of the building, I'm going to do a dry brush along the bottom, and then I'm going to do a dry brush even a little bit lower down of Screaming Skull, and then that'll be the building sort of done, painted and weathered. And then there's a few things just specific to this model that I would need to do after the fact. So that would be all these funky mushrooms that it's got all over the place growing. And then if you look inside, there's actually some lights on the inside of the buildings. So I'm going to paint those in as well, in the same way I do on my other terrain sets as well. So first things first, dry brush a Steel Legion drab, and then Screaming Skull. So I've got a bigger brush. Again, work it in to your kitchen roll, and then probably easier again to just flip it over. Sometimes what I do is to make sure the paint's not too thick, I'll just dry brush along the actual bottom of the model. I do this a lot with tanks as well. I'll dry brush the bottom, the underside of the tank, then work my way out from there. So dry brush out there, and then start to work the paint up the model from the bottom. You can do this nice and heavy and work your way back up over, sort of in reverse of what you were doing earlier. So again, just dry brush it onto the base of the model first. So we'll continue this all the way around the base, the floor of the model. Next up, got me Screaming Skull. Like I say, Screaming Skull is just used on all terrain that I do. Every single piece of terrain. When it comes to metal buildings like this, where I've chipped most of it, I don't dry brush over that. But if it's anything else, so if you've seen like my Age of Sigmar buildings with the medieval look, everything on them is dry brushed with Screaming Skull when I'm done. So, like I say, I've gone along the bottom. Doesn't stand out too much, but again, dry brush along the bottom first. And then from there, work the paint out just to build up a dusty effect, and it'll help blend it in with the stones and the board, that whichever it is that you're using. Pretty much blend in with anything when you do it this way. And again, that's why I didn't do any of the chipping or anything else, because I knew I was going to be doing this later. Again, always just dry brush the bottom of the model first, just to work out any thickness of the paint, and then just work your way up it. Same again around here, get a bit more paint. Dry brush the bottom. And just work the paint out up. I'll continue this along all the bottom of the model, and then you could consider it done, but like I say, this model's got a few little extra bits of detail that need to be done after this. So now the base of the model has been dry brushed, so that should help blend it in, and then we've got the rest of it's all just chipped and rusted away. Like I say, it doesn't stand out too much, so it shouldn't take the eye away too much from the miniatures. And then, like I say, I did the inside as well, dry brushed along the bottom of that. Now this would normally be done, but like I say, I've now got to do the natural looking things, the mushrooms on there, and then the lights have to be done. The lights have to be done last, because if they're casting any light onto the mushrooms and stuff, you can't paint them after the fact, because then you'll have light casting onto things and not on others. So the lights always have to be done last on your scenery. So I don't normally paint mushrooms, so I think what we'll do for these like capped mushrooms here, we'll do them just with a brown stem and a red top. And then I was thinking for these ones that are stuck on the side, like I ain't no mushroom expert, people, I'll be honest with you, but what I do know is that those cool glowy mushrooms in Skyrim, you'd have in caves. I can't remember what they were called. It's been years since I played Skyrim, but yeah, they're all over, stuck on the side. I was thinking of painting them like that slightly bluey glow to them, as if they're, as if there's like some sort of magical mushroom. Okay, I've had a little pause, filmed a battle report, so cleared all this off. Now I've put everything back how it was, and now it's time to do the mushrooms and the other mushrooms, and then the lights. So the first mushrooms I'm going to go for is, like I said, I don't know what types of mushrooms these are, but these sideways ones that are stuck on the building and the windows and things like that. So I want to do them in a blue. These are actually the same colours that you can do plasma with if you're doing like any plasma coils and stuff like that. So I'm going to base the area in Macragge blue, and when I do that, I won't just base the actual mushroom. I'll also do a little bit around the area as well, because I want them to give off like a little slight glow, like I said, on top of those Skyrim mushrooms. Then it'll be Sortek green, which is the main colour of my Stormcast Eternals. So it's a little bit of a turquoisey colour. And then last we'll use Temple Guard blue as a highlight on there. But each time I do the colour, I'll dry brush very lightly around the area with the colour to almost like they're giving off a slight bluey glow to the area. So use a bigger brush. There we go, there we go. So like I said, we'll start with Macragge blue. Can you see my palette there? You can see it. Don't want to be too watery. And then what I'll do at first is I'll just be stabbing the blue in to get all the blue into the area with get the blue all the way in there. And then, because I've had a little bit of water, it's not very good for dry brushing, so once I've base coated it, I'll dry the brush off, and then I'll dry brush a little bit around the area where the mushrooms are. And one other thing I realised about this as well is it's quite handy, because what I've been saying for all this is if you use similar techniques for your scenery, so like with the same shading for the dirt and the rust, and then the same sort of similar chipping effect, means your scenery sets can tie in. And I just realised that all these funky mushrooms and that means it'll tie in with my Death World alien trees and terrain, and my stuff I use for like the gnarlwood, which means I can combine those scenery sets. So I could do an orc base on a Death World, so have these orc buildings with, you know, crazy alien fauna around them and like crazy plants and stuff, which would be quite cool as a theme for a game board. So yeah, I'm going to continue base coating these. I'll base coat them all in, and then I'll dry and brush off, and I'll do some very, very, very light dry brushing in each area. I've base coated in the colours. Base coated in the mushrooms with blue, as you can see, but because the paint was a little bit watery, I didn't do any actual dry brushing. So I've cleaned the brush. Now I've worked in some blue into the kitchen roll, and I'm just gonna very, very lightly in each area just give a light dry brush around the area, and then I'll build that colour up, and it'll look like the mushrooms are giving off a bluey, greeny glow around them. Okay, next colour up will be Sortek green. I don't necessarily need this to be watered down, because it's gonna be like a heavy dry brush more than anything. So you see, I've finished dry brushing the extra blue on, so it looks a little bit more glowy, I suppose, around them. And then very simply just start dry brushing over them with the Sortek. Brush down over it first, but then I'm going to get the underside of the mushrooms and dry brush up over with the brush and get the underneath of each mushroom. But this is going to be a pretty heavy dry brush, really. And like I say, because of the shape of these mushrooms, I'm just going up and down on them to catch the lip. And then, like I say, but just like with the Macragge blue, with the Sortek green, I'm still going to dry brush just past each mushroom as well and try and catch the area around them, so the colour it looks like it's glowing onto the building around it. Okay, that's the excuse me, that's the Sortek green now done on the mushrooms. So last bit to do is Temple Guard blue. It's like an ice blue colour. I'm going to use a smaller brush for this one, because I'm sort of just going to I am going to dry brush it, but then I'm also going to highlight the edges of the lips of the mushrooms as well once I've done with the very light dry brush of this. So you can still start it how you would with a edge highlight along the lips of all the mushrooms. But then if I work it out, you see that, so if I dry brush underneath them and just catch and bring out the highlight from the edge of the mushrooms, and I'll just do a little bit on the area around. Doesn't have to be amazing. A little bit more, and just build up that edge on those mushrooms again. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to go around and do that, all these mushrooms on the outside, and then do the ones on the inside. Okay, so that's the mushrooms done on the outside, and then I also spin it round. I did all the ones on the inside as well, and there's one on the roof as well next to the capped ones. So I'm quite happy that these are on here, because I was thinking that the outside looked a little bit flat and dull. Normally the GW ones have got some lights or whatever on the outside of the building that can help like make it pop a little bit. So I'm glad that I've done these like glowing mushrooms on the outside, because they give it, I don't know, some points of focus, I think, on the building. So on the inside of it, we've got these massive capped mushrooms, which I'm sure a grot would love to get his hands on. So I'm just going to do them your standard typical, red cap. But because I want to do them a little bit different to the red of the building, so the red of the building is corn red. So I thought, right, well, what I'll do is I'll do Mephiston red for the caps, and I'll use Xandri dust for the stem. I've got Rakarth flesh to do any, those white spots on some of the mushrooms. And then I'll highlight, I haven't got it yet, I'll use Wazdaka red as a highlight on the mushrooms. So first things first, I'm just going to base colour all three of these in, and then give all three of these colours a wash of Agrax Earthshade. With these mushrooms, it'll actually be a lot easier to make a start with the stem and get in underneath each of them. So I'm going to start by just base coating all the stems of the mushrooms, and then that way I can just paint up and flick the paint up over the top onto the cap, and then I'll just paint down over with the red, and that'll probably be a lot easier. So yeah, base coat all these stems in now with Xandri dust, which I almost called Kemmery brown because that's what it used to be called. Okay, that's the stems painted in on the mushrooms. Whoa, God, this thing's too big. Next up, Mephiston red. I'm going to knock that over probably. I'm going to close that, in fact. Get out of here. Right, next up, Mephiston red. Just a nice solid base coat on the caps of all these mushrooms. Probably take 2 coats because of the way this, because like I said earlier, with it being 3D printed, sometimes it soaks in the paint a bit more because it goes into the lines of the print. For reference, sometimes I do cheat when it comes to drying my models. I will use a fan. Come here. Don't put it on the high setting and melt your model like I've done before. Yeah. Let's dry those mushrooms. Okay, next thing, Rakarth flesh. Just for a bit of fun, I'm going to put a few of those big white spots that you see on mushrooms. So if Super Mario's going to have a field day if he turns up on this board, isn't he? So let's have a look. I'll just put a few random sized. Not on all of them. I'm not going to do it on all. Probably some of the bigger ones. Just put just a few spots on these mushrooms with Rakarth flesh, and then I'll put Agrax Earthshade over the lot. Okay, painted some spots on the mushrooms all the way up on the top. Now, I'm going to put Agrax Earthshade over these. Now, you see, a second ago, I was just warming the model up with my heater just to help the paint dry, because I put 2 thick coats on the mushroom tips. But the thing that the heater helps with when it comes to these mushrooms when I'm putting the Agrax is because the stems and the way they're shaped, gravity's going to get involved. and it's going to drag all the agrax to the bottom. You don't want to get that horrific pool and have a big pool of agrax at the bottom that you're going to be constantly trying to scoop up with your brush. If you warm them slightly, it's going to help the agrax stick and dry on the mushrooms where you apply it, rather than just going straight to the bottom. The new shades are much better anyway for this, because they've got the hold the surface tension much better. But yeah, I'm going to warm up these mushrooms a bit first with my heater before I apply Agrax Earthshade over them. Teaching you all the tricks here, all the secrets of the trade. Just do not put this on the top setting and melt your model. Like, parental warning coming up on the screen. Don't melt your models, just have on the light setting. Okay, just finished doing that. Give them a pot of Agrax a good shake. Try not to knock it over. Get this big brush, which I'm using for all sorts. It's quite handy, this one. And then I'm just going to slap it on quite thick. I'm not watering it down, because let's face it, these are looking a little bit cartoony, these mushrooms, aren't they? It's getting a bit, yeah, it is looking a bit like Super Mario in here. Apply that, stab that in, so right in close to these mushrooms I can't even speak here. Listen to what I mean, not what I say. Slap that all over them, the stem and the caps. Watch out, like I say, I have warmed it up, so it shouldn't be too bad for pooling at the bottom, but keep an eye on it to make sure it's not pooling at the bottom, because it'll just look horrendous if there's a great big puddle of Agrax at the bottom. So yeah, I'm going to go around and apply that around all of these red mushrooms. Right, last part, some thin down Wazdaka red, just a pastel-y red colour. I'm going to go around I've already started because I started filming and then I thought I was done, I wasn't. So I'm just going to paint down from the tip, along the edge, again, just painting the tip. Paint's watered down so I can just feather it out from the tip, and then I'm just going to go around. I'm not going to go mental on these mushrooms, because I don't want them standing out too much, to be honest with you. Okay, I've gone and I've painted the lips and the tips of all of the mushrooms. I'm happy with that. Next up is how we're going to do. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 lights on the inside of the building. We're going to paint them, and then that'll be the building done. And then I'm going to go on to setting up a board for a game and showing off the rest of the orc terrain. Okay, last thing up is the lights. You need 4 colours to do the lights, which I do the same thing on all of my terrain. I do them all the same way. So like I keep saying, you can tie your scenery pieces together. First thing I'm going to do, solid base colour of phalanx yellow on the actual light itself. Once that's a little bit like the mushrooms, paint that on solid. You might want to do 2 coats, Duncan Road style, get a nice solid yellow on the light. Then what you do is you then brush around the area with the same colour. So you do a light dry brush. But when I show you how to do it, when you do it, you don't just, you got to think of the light casting out from the area and you try to make your brush follow that, so you catch things the correct way the light would catch it. Once you've done that, you then dry brush the light and the area around it with a white. I've got white scar here, but I used to use the army paint white until it ran out, but this is fine for what I'm using it for. Games Workshop yellows tend to be very chalky, but this pot's okay, I think. Well, if I say I think, probably checking it will be all dry. But dry brush over the light, then dry brush around the area with white scar. Then after that, it's cyan and yellow contrast. But it's, as you can see just from the pot, it's very, very orangey, so you need to thin it down a lot with some contrast medium, probably like 3 parts. Generally I'll go by eye when I'm mixing it up, depending on what size area I'm going over. So first things first, phalanx yellow, 2 coats, then a dry brush of phalanx yellow, then a dry brush of white scar. For the purposes of the video, I'm just going to paint in this light first. Now, I used to try to paint around the bars, you know, the protective bars on lights, and then leave them, and I got sick of doing it, so now I just paint the whole thing, as if the light's so bright you can't see the bars anyway. As a visual effect, it looks better anyway, and in my opinion, to just have the whole area glowing. So I'm just going for the light fitting itself. I'm going to base coat that solid yellow. So I'm going to be neat as I go around the actual light fitting itself. Once I've done 2 coats, then I'll dry brush it. Okay, so I've went and I've solid base coated the lights with phalanx yellow twice, 2 thin coats. There you go, Duncan. I hope you're happy, mate. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the phalanx yellow and a stumpier brush that's a bit knackered, and I'm going to work into the bristles for a dry brush. Now I'm going to do this quite thin because I don't want these lights are massive on this building. Sometimes they're just like little spotlights, which are much better than that, but it is what it is. So I could, if I wanted to, because of the size of these lights, have them like, you know, staring at the sun, but I'm not going to do that. So start, and I'm just going to dry brush very, very lightly around the actual light itself, and just build up a yellow around there. Then what I'm going to do from that point there is, like I was saying earlier about the way the light would be casting out, should I say, from it. So I'm just going to dry brush down over, because that's the way the light would be going. I'm just going to catch the top of this panel. Yeah. Then if we look at this, can you see that? There's a girder, a strut holding it. So as the light would be casting outwards from there, I'm going to dry brush the inside of that girder to be getting caught by the light, and then obviously it'll be catching that there as well. It's scenery, so you don't have to be incredible with it all. And then, like I say, it would catch this side of this panelling more than it would catch the other side. And down over. Now you could do the but there's no detail there really, so I'm more just going to go along the top of it there, concentrate it to the centre where the light would be stronger. I'm just going to continue doing that. We'll focus on just this light on the bottom for now. But it's already looking like it's starting to cast a bit of light from there. And all I'm doing is just a bit of yellow dry brushing really. You've got to make sure you've really thinned the paint out. I'm not using a lot of it. Otherwise this could be, make sure the paint is dry, because this would be absolutely horrific if you hadn't done that. So I'm just going to keep dry brushing, keep building it up. Then I'm going to do the same with white. That's why I changed the water. Okay, so I did it on all of them anyway. So looks cool, right? It's accentuated a little bit by the ring light that I'm using to film with. But I've dry brushed around all the areas. It absolutely batters brushes this, by the way. So whatever brush you plan to use, if you plan to copy this, make sure whatever brush you're going to use is destined for, like, you know, being a knockabout brush, so to speak. Next up, white. I'm going to do the exact same thing with white. I'll start by dry brushing. Ooh, God, that looks runny. Oh, dear me. Oh, God, GW white paints are so bad. You get hand-arm vibration syndrome trying to get GW paints to work. There, that's better. Still, it's going to need working into the kitchen roll. And then I'll start, let's work that out. It doesn't really matter if you get a bit of yellow into this paint, because it's just going to be for the light anyway. God, GW white paints are so bad. Then just start on the light itself, just to help work out the white paint. In case it's too thick, it doesn't really matter if you build it up too much. Oh, that looks cool, doesn't it? Whee! Start on the light fittings themselves. Just give a light dry brush over that. Once the paint's really thinned out on your brush, then you can go around and do a little bit on the panels around it. Okay, I'm done with that now. So I dry brushed the centre, well, I've dry brushed the lights, and then adjust the area just around the light with white as well. So that's that done. Next step is to sort of glaze the area with ironed in yellow. Like I say, it's very, very orangey, so it needs watering down, sorry, thinning down. I don't really use water for this. Medium's much better. So I'm probably going to go for probably 4 parts contrast medium to 1 part ironed. I'm getting some use out of this bigger brush. Now remember, you get your contrast medium out first. So 1, 2, 3, 4 dollops of that, and then tell you what, I'll get 1 little bit of that. Can you see that on camera? Mix that in and thin that right out. See, it's not looking so orangey now that I've thinned it out. Now get these 2 out of the way. Get lost before I knock you over. And then for the light fitting itself, get it right in there so it can add a little bit of shading to the metal bars for the light. And then everything else, the area around where you've dry brushed, you can pretty much just paint it, because all you're doing is a thin glaze over the area. Anywhere that you've dry brushed that the light would be touching, doesn't matter if you just stab it out on the edges of panels like that, it's fine. This is super quick to do. You just grab it, start on the light, always start on the light fitting, get it right in there, around all the bars, and then just from there, just drag it out on all the bits it's touching around it. Turn that round, get it on that side of there. And again, then move on to the next light. Okay, I've dried that off with a little bit of help from my fan heater. Now, you could just leave that there if you wanted to. It's only terrain. But what I'll show you, what I do, because I do this technique on everything, if it's like headlights for tanks as well, stuff like that. Get rid of that pot of white before I knock you over. Got a little bit of white. So if I can come in a bit closer. Basically what I'll do, I know it doesn't really make any sense, but I'll paint the centre of the light with white all across the bars. So not the whole thing, just the centre of it. I'll go across all the bars. Then obviously the bars aren't actually the light, it's inside of that. So is this too bright? Well, it's because the light, oh, that's how clever I am. Then I'll just put a dot of white in the centre of each one of these grids. Tell you what, actually, if I turn this light off, that's on the ring light, maybe that'll help. Oh God, that's not helping at all. But you can see the difference now on that light compared to the ones on the other floors. And that's by doing a very, very quick, just dots of white and some lines of white on the centre light. So I'm going to do that on all the other ones, and that's the light's done, and then that's a piece of terrain done. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a board for a battle report, and I'll show it off in amongst all my other orc terrain. And I've had an idea for like doing it in a deaf world because of all these funky mushrooms. So that's us done with the painting. You can see the lights a little bit better with the white dots there, I think, from this angle. And we spin around. I really wish this had some lights on the outside actually, now that I've finished the terrain piece. I noticed when I was on eBay that the place that sells it, they're selling another piece for the other corner. So I'm thinking what I do if I'm going to buy that one, what I might do is have a look through my bits box and stick a few lights on the outside, and I might even come back to this one and maybe plonk a few outside lights on it as well. But I'm happy with how that's turned out. Let's get a board set up and let's get it integrated into the rest of the orc terrain. Let's go. Okay, so next part is I've got my mat, which is from gamemat.eu, and then I've got, like I said, I'm going to do orc terrain, which you can see how well I look after it. I keep it all in a box. Then I've got my Death World terrain. Again, look like I threw it in there from 3 meters away. But get my mat and whoop. Oh, beautiful. Now that's been pre-measured to be 60 inches across because that's how far a game of 40k is played at the moment. And what I like to do usually is I'll pick out a deployment card, give me sort of an idea what I'm going to do. So for this one, because I've got my new big corner ruined building, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play seek and search and destroy, sorry. I'm going to make the centre this no man's land that you can't go into. I'm going to make that like a big building to make the new scenery piece that I've just painted like the centre point. And then, like I was saying, because the building has got the funky mushrooms and stuff on it, so we'll plonk it down there. So we've got the building on the table now, and because it's got all the crazy plants and stuff growing all over it, I'm going to make, what I'm going to do, this side of the board, because I like to make the boards always look like you're getting to somewhere. So I'm going to make this part of the board look like it's Death World, you know, plants and stuff like that and trees, and then have the orc base start from that point in the back end of the board, be the orc base on that side of the battlefield with all the trees on this side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a 4-corner massive building, and I might make 2 roads coming into it from this way. So the game I'm thinking about doing, because at the moment Imperial Knights seem to be quite strong with the new stats and the points, I thought, well, I might ask Andy if I can use his Imperial Knights and he uses my orcs, and I fight my own orc army, and I have the Imperial Knights attack an orc base on this Death World. So let's start setting the scenery up. Okay, so here's me setting up a board. First thing I'm doing is measuring out an objective marker in the centre of the board, and then, as I showed from the deployment, you need a 9-inch sort of dead zone, so I'm making that the building in the centre. Then from that point I'm starting to put some air. I treat everything as area terrain, so I'm trying to make some buildings, so see some area terrain, but I'm making it symmetrical, but I'm also making the what is the obscuring terrain on both sides different. So one side's the trees with a footprint, and on the other side we've got the orc buildings, but both serve the same purpose. And I am actually making this board here mirrored, so the centre building is mirrored, and then I've got trees on one side, buildings on the other, but they're basically in the same place, but they look completely different, because, you know, that's what you can do when you're not using horrible identical to MDF terrain. That was my green box that I keep all my ammo crates and oil barrels and stuff like that in, just so I can add a little bit of extra flavour to the building, so I can make like fuel dumps, ammo dumps, build up the barricades and things like that with extra bits of detail. And then I've got, this is my clump foliage tub where I have all my crazy plants and things like that, so I'm getting out the more colourful ones to try and match in with how I did the mushrooms is that on the building. Next up I've got that's my dice tray that I roll my dice in, but in between games I tip all of the rocks in, and then I use like a big makeup brush and I go around and I brush it up against all the scenery. It also helps to make a footprint for obscuring terrain, so you know fine well whether you're in it or whether you're out of it. If you're in past the rocks, you're getting the cover. If you're on the other side, then you're either obscured or you're about to get shot to bits. So yeah, I go around, I brush all of that. This was 35 minutes, I think, in total, how long it took me to set all of this up. And there we go. We've got ourselves a battlefield set up for a battle report, including my brand new, as you've seen, painted piece of terrain, which I've put into the corner there. And I've added a little bit of the lichen and the clump foliage stuff that I've used in and around the Death World stuff to help tie it in. And yeah, I'm really happy with how that's turned out. Let's go around the other side. It's great. I can't wait to get hold of the other piece now. But I hope this has been like a fun video to watch or informative. Maybe it's inspired you to set your own boards up, get your own terrain sets going. I love my orc terrain set. I love adding extra pieces to it, and yeah, I'll definitely be adding more, and I can't wait to have a scrap on this battlefield. So thanks for watching. And then what are you supposed to say on YouTube? You're supposed to say like, subscribe, drop a comment, buy me a can of Monster, become a member, buy me another can of Monster. Cheers guys, I'll see you later.